3000.
What he's doing. I hate doing it, but I want everyone to like, subscribe, follow us on our Instagram, hit the subscribe button right there. One click, it's totally free. It helps the channel grow. Share the content, comment, do all that good stuff. Help us keep bringing you 3000 podcasts. Now to the guest. Cheers. What is doing? My name is Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a waterman, a surfer, a bodyboarder, a skateboarder, a dude of many talents, Eddie Wearne, a.k.a. Sheddy. Eddie, thanks for coming, man.
Multi-boarder.
Multi-boarder, is that the word?
Yeah, surf, skate, bodyboard, snow, foil, everything in the shop I like to sell.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, man, you had a bit of a dip last night in the big pool over in Tullamarine. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we kick things off?
Oh, yeah. We had, it was a bodyboarding Victoria. They just run the expert, the most hollow, challenging mode for an hour. And the whole pool was booked out for the late show in the dark. And crew come from all over Victoria just to hang out and catch up, and invited a few of my old mates that I looked up to when I was kids, and they turned up and they're a bit older than me. That was pretty rad. Took the surfboard up, rode both boards. So I surfed the first one and then bodyboarded the second one with all the crew. And then, got home kind of midnight, got up this morning. I was like a bit of anxiety about doing this, to be honest. But, got up. Anxiety, what do you do? What do I do when I'm anxious? Wim Hof method as soon as I woke up. 11 minutes, breathing cycle.
You've been doing that for years?
Yeah, yep. And then straight into a hot bath, stretching out all, I've had over 40 fractures, 2 knee surgeries, shoulder surgery. So straight into the hot bath, a little bit of mincemeat for breccia on the carnivore, and then straight into a cold shower. I did 30 squats in the cold shower. Got a coffee on the way here, and now we're ready to go. Fresh as a button. A little bit of anxiety from the coffee and the nervousness of putting my story on the table for everyone. But I think it's going to be good. Let's do it.
Let's do it, man. All right. Well, let's kick things off where you grew up and how you got involved in this water activity.
All right. So where I grew up. From birth or from...
Let's go from birth, man. We're in for the long haul.
Yeah, all right. So my parents were kind of hippies, and they were on the way, I don't know exactly, but they're on the way to move to the sort of mid-north coast, Byron, Nimbin kind of area. Mm-hmm. And I was born in the Foster Tuncurry Hospital.
When we're talking mid-70s?
77.
Yep.
So I turned 48 in June.
Uh-huh.
So I'm closer to 70 than 20, unfortunately. But
scary, isn't it?
It is a bit scary, but it is what it is. You got to do what you can to stay young. So anyway, back to that. We moved to Dunoon, which is a small town kind of closer to Nimbin than Byron, and my parents got a butter factory that, they got hold of an old dilapidated butter factory, and it was a pretty beautiful place to live. It was a full hippie upbringing.
I could imagine.
I don't remember an alternative to what the sort of the life we live down here these days, but I don't remember going anywhere, for example, where, parents weren't smoking pot on arrival and free, a really free, beautiful, lush surrounding of the property where we lived. And, it was a beautiful place. Have childhood memories of, big snakes and Byron Bay beaches, empty in Byron Bay, relatively a lot different than what it is now.
Very different.
40 years ago. It was, it would have been 35 years ago, those memories, my early memories. Yeah, I've got a lot of memories, but my parents split on my 8th birthday.
Uh-huh. On your actual birthday?
On my birthday.
That's hectic for a kid.
8th birthday present. Anyway, so we moved to Frankston, lived with my uncle for a bit. So I'd been to Dunoon Primary, Lismore Primary, St Carthage's Lismore, I think it was called. And then I ended up at, what's that school next to Baxter Tech there for a bit. And then, anyway, Mum decided to study law, so we moved up to Monash, sort of Clayton, Monash area, near Brandon Park Shopping Centre, in between there and the uni.
Yep.
And so I went to Monash Primary, And that was that. By then, it was sort of halfway through grade 3, 4, 5, 6, I think. And so she studied law. We didn't have a lot of money. But
And she's single at this stage, so she's got the kids.
She was single for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah, a very long time. And yeah, so we kind of grew up without much. You know, we didn't have any spare money and whatnot. So things were pretty tight. But I went to Monash Primary, and it was the most multicultural school in Victoria at that time.
Yeah,
So
it would have been back in the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, in the 80s. Yep, exactly, mid 80s. So I had friends that were like, my best friend was a Vietnamese boat person, and you'd go around to his house and like you'd think you're doing it tough, but you'd see like they were like surviving on literally like 2-minute noodles and no dentist, and you know, like, so you didn't feel like when you were at that school, you didn't feel like you were poor.
Everyone was in it together.
Because all these other crew were like, all these other crew were in the same similar situation. And you had your Yugoslavian mates that had come out of, you know, Croatian mates and Italian and Greeks and crew from China, Taiwan, Japan, you know, South America, kids from every country you could ever think of. So there's never been any I've never had any sort of racism from that point. Never really ever. But like growing up from the peace, love, and mung beans and the freedoms of that, almost like the Nimbin experience, but a little bit closer to Byron. But you know, you get the drift. Huge freedoms, the hippie movement, to something quite different.
In suburban Melbourne.
Yeah, like in suburbs, and then. Yeah, I guess that was when, like, because I know you guys, you're into your skating, grew up skating and into the hip hop and the graph scene and the Melbourne scene, and that's what a lot of the pods I've listened to that you've done since I've been invited. I've listened to a few crackers, and the Jaff Curtis one was really good. He was an inspiration for me growing up. But yeah, back to the story. So that's when I got my first little soft, like the equivalent. For the kids listening, like the equivalent of a little penny board. And that was my first skateboard. I would have been in grade 4, maybe grade 5.
We used to call them banana boards back in the day.
The banana boards, yeah, the flexi banana boards. And I swear, like, so up the road, you can look it up on the map. You can look up Saniky Street, Monash, if you want, Saniky. But halfway up on the right, there's this little court. And my older sister and I, so I lived with my older sister Sky and my other sister Claire and my mum. And you know, my sister Sky was a stepsister, half sister, but she came with us and ended up moving to England around that time. But we used to skate down the hill together, and she was older than me, but we'd just literally come in and she'd block the roads, or my other, you know, Croatian mates had the house right there, and you'd come flying down the street, and no pads, no helmet, no, you know, zero fucks given. Just like I thought I was surfing, you know, even though I was just on this banana board, and you just come around, and then you just kind of be going faster and faster until you come in and all your elbows and knees were gone. But I remember just thinking, I'm like on the TV where I'd seen surfing. I remember thinking, I'm surfing, I'm bottom turning around this thing like a surfer.
At like 10? Are you like 10 years old?
About 10.
10, yeah, okay.
Yeah, roughly.
But you hadn't
10.
jumped in the water yet. You just sidewalked.
Never surfed. No, like I'd been in the water a lot as a kid.
Yep.
I remember, I think, getting the train out to Byron from maybe Lismore, even with mum as a kid.
Yeah.
That it either was a dream or it was a real. I don't know. Sometimes dreams become realities.
They do, man.
Sometimes realities become dreams. But I'm pretty sure we went out there. Like mum, I do remember being out there with mum and with dad and uncles at Byron Bay Beach a lot as a kid, because it was pretty close and pretty beautiful out there. So
when you're in Melbourne, you're doing the skating thing. Do you then venture down to the peninsula to start, you know, jumping in the water down here?
Yeah, so what happened, I guess the next thing in the board riding journey was, you know, I got a UFOS, which is kind of like those very flex double kicks with the bubble pads and the rails.
Yep.
And that was the sort of my sister gave me that one. She said, "Look, you're going crazier than me down this hill. You can have it." And it was the pink one. It was a pink UFOS. And so I'd kind of had that, and then we moved to the peninsula, and I was in year 7, and I feel pretty blessed that I did. So I actually ended up going to 4 high schools. I actually went to Padua, then Peninsula, then Mornington High, then Mount Eliza. So there's a podcast just on that if you want it, but we could rush through it, I guess.
Well, give us the quick version. We've always got more time for you to come back, and we can dive deeper. But let's give us a quick version this time.
Yeah, we'll give it a quick version. All right. So I started off at Padua. I think Mum had the good Christian Catholic ideology in that,
Is it in Rosebud? That's the Rosebud
I was
campus?
at Mornington.
Oh, Mornington.
Because, we were up that way. And then, so I went there for a bit, and then I got a music scholarship. And, Padua was cool. I didn't mind it. Made some good friends. I was doing all right there. And then anyway, I got a music scholarship. I'd actually been taught the clarinet from grade 3, and I was kind of like gifted on that without being arrogant, but probably been better at the clarinet than anything I've ever touched in my life.
It was just natural to you.
Still.
Right.
Like better than I was ever a surfer, better than I ever was on any board, or better than I ever have been on any other instrument. But I can still pick up a clarinet and play by ear.
It's an unusual instrument though, isn't it? It's not one that can really you can get a scholarship, but where do you go? Where do you take it? In an orchestra or something?
Yeah, exactly. And it wears thin too. Like I kind of learnt that, and it was something that we could learn at school or whatever. But then it ended up getting me the scholarship. But then so suddenly I'm at Peninsula Grammar, and after a little while, we still didn't, Mum was still kind of studying and maybe doing her articles, which is like where you're just starting out, like your apprenticeship after you finished uni.
But having a scholarship would help when times are tough at home.
Scholarship was, obviously helpful, but then you also got to realise when you've got a scholarship that you got to keep up with the Joneses and stuff. So, you're rocking up to school with... I was skipping lunches and stuff at Peninsula, and other kids are getting dropped off in BMWs and Mercedes Benzes and stuff, and I'm going, oh, what am I going to eat today?
Did you feel like a bit of a fish out of water there?
A little bit, but just financially, really. I know it started off financially, but then, I've got a lot of great friends, and here's to all the crew there and from Padua that I'm mates with so far on the story, and Mount Eliza and Mornington and all the crew, because it's lucky I went to those schools now because I know a lot of people.
Expands your network.
Expands your network. So that was a huge blessing in the end, especially with what I do for work now. But so where were we? So back to so anyway, it got to the point after a little while at Peninsula, I was just like, I couldn't afford to go to the school camp, for example, and you felt a bit of an outcast for that because that'd be a couple of grand on top. And then it was like with the scholarship, they made you do Saturday sport. So it wasn't just a clarinet scholarship. I had an athletic scholarship as well. So it was running and long distance running and clarinet, Anyway, it got to the point where I started surfing, and I had lots of good friends that were into surfing and bodyboarding, and from there and from other schools, and
because bodyboarding was really big in the sort of early to mid 90s.
Yeah, right up to sort of the start of the early 2000s, it peaked, and then but we can get onto that later. So anyway, it got to the point where I was starting to get, do some cool moves on the bodyboards and whatnot. I was surfing a little bit, skating, but all of a sudden, school was tying me down to me because I had, Monday night you'd have to do concert band practice. Tuesday night you'd have to do cadets and you'd have to carry that stuff. And then Wednesday night you'd have your your music lesson outside of school hours. Thursday night, you'd be doing running or basketball so that you could qualify to do Saturday sports.
No time to surf.
So, and I just wanted to go surfing, you know what I mean? I was just like, I've been getting these barrels and doing like cool moves on a bodyboard and standing up a little bit on a surfboard and whatever. And to me, that was giving me this feeling that nothing had given me before. And so one day, anyway, it was early year 10. I just went up to the head of music. His name was Mr. Hutchinson, and I said, "Look, Mr. Hutchinson, I've been playing the clarinet here for a while. I feel like the puppet of the concert band, and I'm playing guitar at home. I'm playing drums at home. Had a drum kit at home. Had guitar at home. I'm writing my own songs. I've got my own music. I want to learn to sing or play guitar or drums, or combination of the above as part of my music scholarship." And he was just like, I said, "I feel like a bit of a puppet there." And I said, "And to be honest, I'm better than my teacher, and I can play anything by ear. So there's just nowhere for me to progress. I'm happy to keep playing it and doing it but he goes, we don't like your attitude." And I was like, I'm talking to you. I said, "Well, I don't like yours and I'm done. So you know how we're not allowed to skate in this school?" I said to him something like that. Anyway, I just went and I grabbed my skateboard. You weren't allowed to skate to school, but by then I had an epic. It was right when the wide decks went into the paddle pops, and the rich kids all of a sudden had like their little tiny wheels, and they're doing like kick flips down 2 stairs and like starting to go down 8 stairs and all that sort of thing. It happened really quickly. You remember that? But I had like the hammerhead, the hosoi, with like Indies and 66s. So I had a rocking skateboard to get down hills and to get from A to B on. And I just skated. I just remember grabbing all my stuff out of the locker. And at the time, it was a lot because I'd have like an instrument, I'd have an Army Cadets bag or a sports bag and a backpack. And I felt like my whole back was being bent by the burden of just carrying it on the bus each day. And I just said, "Look, you can stick your scholarship." And then I just remember going past and just going, Eddie. And he was looking out his office window, and I just skated out as I'd seen a couple other cool kids do it. And I looked up to them, and they never came back.
Yeah.
And
had to make an exit.
Had to make a grand exit, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone was just, and I went home to Mum, and she was just like, "What? You what?"
How old would you have been here? Like 15?
Yeah, 15.
Right. So, because from her perspective, she's doing it pretty tough. She's a single mum.
Yeah.
You've got a scholarship and you've just told him to get fucked. So she's like, was that the best idea, Eddie,
Exactly, it was exactly, you took the words right out of her mouth. And I've been we can come back to this again later, but I think sometimes these podcasts you can go around in circles a bit to get your story out. But I've been since labelled bipolar by various couple of doctors and whatnot, psychologists, psychiatrists, or whatever, and medicated. They tried to medicate me, but I threw it away in the future. But look, I don't know if I'm bipolar or if I'm an extremely just emotional and well-driven person or whatever. So, but if I was, like, that would be the first sort of thing. It was pretty radical. But looking back, so, I've told this guy to stick his scholarship to Peninsula, and then 3 or 4 years ago, I'm out in the surf, and one of the teachers who I surf with a bit, he goes, "Oh, how's about when you told him to stick it?" Like, that still goes around the school. That Eddie from Shednine told Mr. But then he goes, "Oh, by the way, did you know that teacher, that head of music, Mr. Hutchinson, he's in jail for like sexual, sexual intercourse with boys or whatever. Like, you can." And so I was just like, "What?" So the one dude that he never did anything to me, but like the way he looked at me and the way he belittled me when he was like, "We don't like your attitude." And there was something about him, and I just was like, "Nah, this isn't right. I'm fucking out of here, eh?" Yeah. And and now this dude's in chat. You can Google it, anyone, Mr. Hutchinson. He ended up doing it there and then another school in Perth, and he's doing 20 years. So that was weird that later on, like I didn't know, but later on to find that out just made me even feel more right about things.
Yeah. Well, you felt that you were getting the negative vibes and you were out of there, you know?
And, you know, that school's perfect for a lot of people, and I made a lot of great friends, and some of my best mates, like even the best man at my wedding, he went to school there, and someone I speak to weekly, and, you know, we grew up surfing and bodyboarding and skateboarding. You know, I grew up, that's Duncan, he lives up at Snapper Rocks these days, but yeah, shout out to the Peninsula boys. You all know who you are, you don't need all your names listed, but legends. A lot of them still shop at my shop and hang out and bring their kids in and move on to do all different things.
So where do you go from that school?
Oh yeah, okay. So it was like
Do you still go to school after that? You have to, sort of.
Well, yeah, I didn't, you know. So then it was like, all right, well, I've gone to 2 schools. And a little bit of it was financial. So why not try a free school? So I went to Mornington High pretty quick, like within a week or so. First day before, like first recess. Now I'm trying to make friends and trying to look around for anyone, you know, like fit in or whatever. Didn't really know many people, few people. But, you know, I'd only been on the peninsula for a couple of years, and you go and kind of make friends with your crew from your couple of schools you've been to and whatever. We didn't have phones, Instagram, social media, none of that. So it wasn't. It was a little bit different back then. But I remember going in, and then there was a lad who I won't name him on here because it'll just create shit. But you know who you are, and we're mates now. But anyway. Old mate headbutts me in the face.
Out of nowhere, or you had an altercation?
Out of nowhere.
He just goes,
Runs
or
up.
you're the new guy, bang.
No, like, hey, Peninsula Puff, remember me? And there was a thing with a couple of my cousins and had got him when he was 12 at the tennis courts or something down the beach or something, and I was there, but I'd never done anything, but I was guilty by association and it was revenge. So it was just one of those things, you know, school bullying. And but my tooth, have a look.
Yeah.
See that how that's black?
Yeah.
So that's all fake. So I actually had to, the dude was heaps bigger than me. I was the skinniest kid in the class, at school. And so I had to hold him down and get my tooth out of his forehead and then go to the sprinklers, blood pissing out of my thing, a whole tooth ripped out, and then wash the tooth off in the fucking sprinkler, and then next thing I'm in the principal's office and he's going, "Oh, so you're trouble, aren't you, Mr. Wearne?" And I'm like, no comment.
Well,
Just
they
sort
know
of,
your history from the other school because they're going to talk.
Third school, you know, so already they treat you with disdain from the start, you know, you obviously, you know, you're on your third school, well, your credibility's already down on that level. So I'm the troublemaker, not the kid who's headbutted me in the face. So,
but you're all cool now.
Yeah, I'm cool with pretty much everyone from all the schools I've went to. I don't really feel like I have too many enemies or any enemies or anything. Maybe some crew with some slight political differences, but you know, we're all pretty good.
Yeah. But so that dude in particular, do you make amends and become friends at school, or is it not until later in life that you guys become mates?
Didn't go to school for long after that because I was at the dentist and then I was like this and that, and then I remember there was the next week, so they got the tooth back in, and then the next week was work experience, and I think that had messed me up a bit, you know, and the whole I was the skinniest kid in the class, and I went over. You had to do work experience, and I went over to McDonald's over the road, you know, on the Nepean Highway on the corner at Mornington. And so I'm like, "Oh, can I do?" Because I didn't have time. They're like, "Oh, you got to." It's Thursday, and I've just had this thing happen. I'm going back to school. You got to start work experience Monday. Everyone else had been planning for months. Oh, I'm gonna go and do it as a carpenter with my uncle, or I'm gonna do signwriting, or whatever people had chosen. You know, any different thing that they'd wanted to do, they'd thought about it. Whereas I was just went to McDonald's and went, "Can I have a job?" Because I got work experience next week with this funny tooth and this scarred fucking front of my face. And anyway, yeah, of course. And so I did a week there. They wouldn't even give me a part-time job after a week's training. They said, "You are unemployable."
Right.
And I was like 15. Imagine like being unemployable at McDonald's after doing 40 hours for free pretty much, or like whatever I think it was like $5 an hour back then if you're on work
I
experience.
think it was $5 a day.
A day or something. Well, it was $5. Maybe it was $5 a day.
I think you got $25 at the end of it.
At
I
the
was
end,
doing it.
yeah, something like that. But anyway, so I went there, and then I just was like, nah, I'm not going to school. And I went home. Mum goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I'm just going to go surfing, Mum." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Oh, I'm just really enjoying surfing. Like on my bodyboard, I'm just going to get the bus. Could get the bus from home to Portsea. Could jump off at the Rye turn off and hitch, or Gunner turn off and hitch down the road, or I could just hitch from the start, or I could ring mates that were a bit older and get lifts, or I could get the bus to Frankston, bus to Point Leo, all that sort of thing, with a skateboard and a bodyboard on the old hammerhead, Hosoi hammerhead, with the bodyboard thing on the back, and then just, so I did that for like 6 months. And
she wasn't happy about it.
No, she kind of was.
Oh.
I think at that point.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't happy about what I'd been up to, but then again, she was a bit like, well, he's just been through the ringer with this, so maybe he should have just stayed at the first school after all.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then I got to a point when things, around that point, where things were, I forget exactly when it was, but there was an issue. But anyway, I was going home, and there wasn't much food, there wasn't much going on, and then I just kind of went, I just went to the cupboard and I grabbed whatever I could, grabbed my bodyboard, grabbed my blanket, grabbed a sleeping bag, grabbed a bag full of clothes, and I just got on the bus and I went to Point Leo in the middle of winter around this June school holidays. And it was, I was 15, maybe 16, no, maybe 15. No phone again, like no phone, no social media, no mobile phones, they didn't exist. And I'm sleeping under the Point Leo boat shed. It was partly in the school holidays until after the school holidays. And I was just like, I'm not going home. And my mate's like, "What?" And I said, "Well, don't tell anyone. I'm having a fucking ball here. I'm just surfing every day, camping, like under the thing." I'm like, "Don't tell the Trigger brothers because I'll tell the police that I'm sleeping. Like there's a vagrant under the boat shed at Crunchy's sleeping." So I was like, "Shh, don't tell anyone. But if you can bring me some food from home, that'd be unreal. And we'll meet at First Reef at around lunchtime whenever I'll be there each day roughly and check in." And that was a really cool time. That was where I fully fell in love with the ocean, So
You felt at home there.
yeah, well, that time that I remember, that was a really good run of swell. And I was still a really skinny, light kid when you're 15, and you're light. Those waves feel a lot bigger than they do now in there, and the sands changed, and the waves were a lot more consistent. You had a lot of higher quality waves, not only at First Reef, but all different reefs around the Point Leo area. The point used to break a lot more hollow on low tide, and it was consistent hollow on high tide.
So what changed it? Like erosion or just what?
They reckon it's a combination of factors, but mostly the sand formations out in the bay through the tidal movement has just changed the way the waves break. But yeah, so anyway, I ended up doing like, I don't know, three and a half weeks or something. Didn't go home, and then
Your mum would have been stressed out.
I think she was, but I was just, I don't know, I was just at a point where I was on a bit of an up. I was on a bit of a high. I was frothing the surfing. I was too angry with what I'd been going through at home. I hadn't seen my dad for like 8 years. There wasn't much going on at home for me, and I just found my freedom there, and I really fell in love with the ocean. And I was surfing for like 8 hours a day. Like I'd just get up at dawn, surf for 3 hours, maybe more, like surf, then have a bit of a snack, some 2-minute noodles and light a little fire, and, some tuna or whatever the boys would bring me, and then I'd surf again for 3 hours, and then I'd surf again, and then I'd do everywhere. I walked from there to like pretty much Flinders and there to Balnarring and surfed all different little waves, a lot of it by myself, and then the boys would come down, and a couple of the guys I got to, we had a really good crew of guys that became our generation of surfers. I mean, there were crew before me that I looked up to in surfing, like in the bodyboarding scene, like Scott Gardner and Josh Morgan, for example. Those guys were pioneers, older than me, and like your Darren Watsons was, like their dad was the ranger at Point Leo and stuff like that, and you had a heap of crew that were, in the board riders club, in the stand-up board riders club, and in the bodyboard clubs that were great surfers at the time, but. What happened with that little time at the beach was, so Dan Moran was coming down a lot. He was super talented. He ended up being on this movie that was our first movie. He was on the original Shednine team. He actually dropped into my shop 2 days ago. He lives in Bali these days. But, and then he ended up going from a kid that could kick flip 6 stairs every time, every shot to to doing alley-oops and air reverses on waves, on little boards that he shaped himself in Mornington, and just had that freaky natural ability. And then Pommy was on the knee board, and he ended up winning a world title in Tahiti later. And there's heaps of other crew. Everyone doesn't want all their names mentioned, but there's a whole crew of us based on, but those guys in particular ended up on the first Shednine team, and we were just selling T-shirts out of the back of the car. No idea that we were going to ever open a surf shop, surf, skate, snow shop or whatever. But yeah, so that was an interesting time. And then I remember, I think I stole a bottle of, I've never been big on thieving, but I think one of the only times I ever stole anything was a bottle of gin. I stole a Mars bar from the Shore and Milk Bar. And I was fucking hungry, right? I was hungry and I had nothing there. And I remember feeling really shit about it and ate it, and maybe the sugar, and I felt really crap. And the same day I was like on a bit of a and anyway, something like this was, there's this girl that I had a crush on, and she was pretty hot, and I thought I'll impress her with Nath likes this bit. I reckon he'll love this bit. He loves the girls. I stole this. I thought I was getting a bottle of vodka. I didn't know much about alcohol. I was very straight, really, at the time for someone that age. A clean skin, so to speak. Had a couple of beers maybe or something at that age, but pretty much a straight edge kid. But I was like, this girl loves to party. I'll get this bottle from one of the sheds at the annexes at one of the things at Shoreham. And then I felt really bad after I got it, and I don't think I've ever. I can tell you, I've looked in the eye and say I've never stolen anything since. It's just not my style. It just made me feel lower than anything I've ever done, and But I took this girl a bottle of gin, thinking it was going to be really great. And anyway, the next thing I wake up in my bed at home. My mum's, and it was like a weird dream. I had this so super hungover, and I open my eyes and just everything's like, oh, and there's my mum, and she's like, and I'm at home, and I'm like, oh, this is a trippy dream. I'm not home. Actually, I am, and mum's looking at me and apparently I'd sculled this bottle to impress this girl, giving her a few shots. So she would have been 15, 16, and just teenage shenanigans that kids get up to or whatever. And it's a funny one, so that was around when I went home, and but yeah, it ended up Mount Eliza High.
So your mum was happy you got home in a roundabout way, though.
Yeah, and look, Mum and I are really close.
Yeah.
Now, and probably closer now than we've ever been. And my dad and I are really close too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because you said you didn't see him for 8 years or something.
Yeah, I didn't really get to see him from sort of 8 till 18, maybe once or twice for like 5 minutes or something. But there was, you know,
So then you're back at home. Obviously, your mum's happy. So then do you go to school? Where do you go from there?
yeah. So after that, I was, like fully fell in love with the ocean, developed a lot of confidence surfing by myself. Even though it was Western Port Bay, I mean, those winter swells in that cold, there was cold nights, lonely nights alone and a bit of fear with that. But suddenly I went to Mount Eliza and it was kind of the last option on the peninsula. I'd done every other school and I was like, far out, I really got to not fuck up.
Yeah.
I got to go. You don't want to go to 4 schools, kids, unless you have to, eh? But yeah, so it was like, I've got to get this right. And I've had a bit of fun. I've been able to go surfing and learn a few life lessons along the way. I'm back at school. I went to Mount Eliza High, and I fitted in really well. And by then I'd made friends from surfing and bodyboarding and whatnot. I was in the bodyboard club. I was surfing. I was skateboarding. And I had a lot of more friends around me. A good circle of network of friends that weren't just from that school, but yeah, from Mount Eliza High. Things were good. I fitted in, had crew that would like take me surfing after school, before school sometimes. I guess also like the fact that I was a bit notorious because crew were like, has this cat? He's just like had been in a couple of fights at a couple of schools. He's just stayed at Point Leo boat shed and he's like, he's been surfing for 6 months while we've all just been like at school. That's pretty cool. Even if he is a bodyboarder. So even the surfers were intrigued,
stigma was there then. The bodyboarding
surfing? There's always been that sort of stigma a little bit, but like I don't know, it's never something that's bothered me. It always kind of toughened me up. I always wanted to master bodyboarding before I went where as far as I could with what I had before I went to surfing. I think was something about it. I really loved it. So, but yeah, at school, I finished Mount Eliza High. Heaps of friends from there. It was a good school. People were good to me. And I had friends from other schools that would pick me up. Their parents would take me surfing, and we got pretty good at wagging in year 12. So I wagged a lot of Fridays because we had materials tech double, and I was actually making a bodyboard. So I'd like be able to like carry it in the real one in the bodyboard bag, but the other one was in there as well, and then sort of drop it at the materials tech office and then walk back through. And the teachers were so used to me carrying it that they didn't even know that I was just running out the back oval and then getting picked up by Bucky and going surfing most Fridays for year 12.
Yeah.
And I got into engineering at Deakin in Geelong. And for me, it was like I could have gone and done anything, and it was a little bit to impress Mum and a little bit maybe because I didn't know if I wanted to do a trade or I didn't even know if I wanted to stay at home long enough to try and do a trade either. Like a bit of me wanted to do a trade back then. Maybe chipping would have been good. I did a lot of work over those years while I was at uni for different trades and before I opened Shednine for almost all the trades except for probably sparkying. Like I pretty much worked as most of the major trades as a labourer, and carpentry is definitely my favourite. It's pretty rewarding at the end of the day when you look up at what you've built each day and then at the end of the week and then at the end of the month. It's a good one. But I ended up going to uni, and a big draw card for me was that you could get Austudy and you could live off that back then without anyone else's financial support. So we could rent a house in Torquay for $120 a week on the beach at Bird Rock, which is one of the most consistent, fun little waves, and just down from Bells Beach and Winky Pop and all of that. And so I'd be over there. I went for that season. When the school terms are on, that's when the swell hits there, and then I'd be working the summers, often living in my van and, staying at my mum's as well, like having access to both coasts and, like gardening down in Portsea, working in different fish and chip shops and whatnot. And then just, so I did a few years of that, and I got about two-thirds of the way through an engineering degree. I copied a lot, but...
What kind of engineering was it?
Manufacturing. So at the end game, I would have ended up, if I'd stuck with that and did what the outcome would have been me like going around factories in Melbourne if I lived down here and then saying, your production line needs to be altered so that it's going to make more profit on this way, that way, and we change that over and put a different person here, and Anyway, a lot of what I learnt actually helps me today with what I do now. So I've got to say it did pay off in ways, and the maths and stuff, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I got really good at wagging, and we had, I guess I kind of got into the partying around then a bit more, around after school. I didn't really party at school time much. It was, a couple of little incidents like the one before, but not really, man. And then, but yeah, we moved to Torquay. I moved in with my cousin and another mate from Mount Eliza, Helmy, who, he actually he ended up a major part of the Rip Curl Tide Watch.
Oh, wow.
And he still works for them. So he dropped out. My other cousin Tim went on, and then I dropped out after. But yeah, I basically went over there, and within, with the bodyboarding, we were like chasing slabs. So I had a good little crew of mates there. So there was like Tim O'Connor, Kane Cherubin. They were like two of the best in the state at the time. They lived within a couple of k's from my house. There was Jason Hazel. He was only in grade 6. His mum had just passed, and he was really good at grade 6. And this is when crew were like, so Andrew Jens, Grant Hill, Jenzy was, best man at my wedding. But, and sorry, the other, so, we just had this little tight-knit community where we'd chuck in $20 each and go down the coast and surf anywhere from, as far as from Point Lonsdale to Warrnambool on any given day. Whether
coast,
we got
a lot more opportunities on that coast than there is to surf down here.
Oh, absolutely. And especially in winter when the swells are big. So we were chasing the heaviest waves we could, and we found named a couple and whatnot. Anyway, within a year or so, roughly might have been the first or second year of being there. When I was here, I had no sponsors, right? When I moved there, suddenly, I had Rip Curl, Reef, Oakley, BZ, Full Bore, with the first, so for different products, and they'd give me
because the whole industry's over that side, really.
The industry was there and not here, so that helped. And just having access through the winter to really high quality little waves right out the front, and then the crazy waves that we chased down the coast, we surfed some incredible waves and found a couple along the way, and those guys were pushing the limits, and they were all sponsored too. And yeah, I really fell in love with it then. And then I kind of I started to do these events around Australia, and then
there was money in bodyboarding then?
Yeah, so Mike Stewart was making the same amount as Kelly Slater around that time.
Wow.
The number one surfer and the number one bodyboarder. Then it all kind of got pushed away a bit later. But yeah, I was like, you know what? I want to have a crack at making my own brand, and it came to where Rip Curl had told me a couple of years in a row, next financial year, I wasn't on a bad wicket for where I was at, really. Like, I think that was like 15 grand wholesale a year, which is 30 grand retail. But if you go with inflation, you'd probably double that now. So I'd walk in the same. There's this cute girl that she used to if Mick Fanning came down and walked into Rip Curl, she'd walk him around, he'd just grab whatever he wanted out of the shop. And I got to do that sort of thing. And then I'd be buying quadruple extra large jackets. I was 63 kilos, and quadruple extra large wetsuits. But they knew I was using that money to take orders to sell it to my mates for a bit more, and use it to travel to contests. So it was on the borderline of and then they kind of said, well, next year I'd beaten all. I went and competed successfully, and I beat a lot of my childhood idols.
Which would have been a spin out for you.
It was a spin out, yeah. Knocking out a lot of my childhood idols and beating some of the best guys in the world. Ryan Hardy, for one, is an example. He was the poster boy for everything at the time. He's a really good friend of mine and a legend, and he's a much better bodyboarder than me. But like, he's never beaten me in a contest. You know, I beat him like three comps in a row in his hometown in Margaret River, and I was just this skinny little kid on the wrong board, like on on a drop knee board over there because the other board didn't turn up, and everyone was like, "Who's this kid from Victoria that's just winning heats?" And then anyway, it got to the point where I was lucky that. So this is an interesting thing I want to put back into the story, right? So we're thinking about Shednine. I'm thinking about Shednine was in the back of my mind and the whole time. And I came from a really different era like you than the kids these days. So back then, if you look at motocross, you had your Krusty Demons, your Seth Enslows, your Metal Militias, your Brian Deegans. You look at skating, you had your Dustin Dolan, your Tass Papases, and you looked at surfing, you had your Ross Clark Jones and your Andy Hineses, and it was ride and party. It wasn't. It was a and if you couldn't fit into that, well, and then I was right on that point. And in the bodyboarding, you had the crew that I looked up to there. A lot were pretty fucking loose too. Like the Cronulla boys from Shark Island, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your Nathan Nugget Purcells and your Dave Ballards and Wingnut. You had all these idols that I was right on the cusp of as that was changing.
Mm-hmm.
So Slater was coming in, and he was different. So I was like, I feel really blessed at this time to look back and go, and I'm sure you do too, that. To anyone that had got the time to grow up with their not just the 90s but 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s in the childhood before the mobile phone, and then to experience life now with with the mobile phone, it's hard to put it down. It's there, and you're like, oh, is someone going to? But you always got something you got to do on the bloody phone these days to survive for most of us.
Yeah,
well, we're trapped to it.
Yeah, we are.
We're trapped to the phone
for sure. But it is a good tool. You just got to use it in the right capacity.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of negatives on it. I read something the other day about if you spend 3 hours a day on your phone on Instagram, that's 9 years of your life.
Yeah, wow.
So, and I spend a fair bit of time on there because I'm stuck in my shop doing that and doing this and promoting kids and doing that. So that one hit, but it's like depends what are you doing on there as well. But anyway, yeah, so to have grown up with these wild idols and then to have all of a sudden, so in my league for bodyboarding, I was in this also just young enough to be in there with the new generation who were like coming through like more, like if you spoke of it in surfing terms, the more like the Kelly Slater generation, I guess, where they were really trying to push a bit more hard and hungrier. Kelly came from an alcoholic Kelly didn't come from the easiest background either, and a lot of success stories back there were people that came from hardship in surfing and like in bodyboarding, whereas today it feels like there's maybe the Brazilians in surfing are a bit more like that. They're pretty hungry, but it feels like, to even get there these days, you need to kind of come from wealth to even to be able to get to those comps and do that thing. You need to kind of have money, whereas we grew up in a time it was a little bit different and what a time to be alive before everything we've been through. And I feel really blessed in the whole history of humanity. I feel so blessed that my life was when it was, like before all this and before the phone. Like it's just an absolutely what a time to be alive.
For sure. I have people come in that are in their 20s and they've grown up with Instagram at primary school, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a spin out. You're like, oh, I would hate to have lived in that era. They don't know any different, but it's just like, yeah, I totally get it, man. I'm glad that we lived in that time as well.
Yeah, you go home and you the coolest kids at school had all the BMXs outside their house, and you went, oh, they're all at that house tonight. I'm going to skate back there. And you'd ring up on your dial-up and go, what is your mum going to take us surfing before school dunks? Or you'd ride down there, or you'd ride around to your mate's house and go, should we get the drum kit out and have what about if we build an underground studio at my house, and sort of ask mum and we'll put the mattress in. And the next thing we got to because we didn't go home and go on Instagram, bro. We had to make our fun. So we built an underground studio, sound recording like this. You'd walk in, one of my first bands was called Switch. You'd walk in under the house and you would switch on one switch. Drums would turn on, lights would turn on, mics would turn on, volumes were set. And then we just switched instruments every song, and that was the rules.
Oh, wow.
And that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool little stage of life. Just that, you know, and I've written 150 songs since I told the school to stick the music scholarship, you know. So, but anyway, we're kind of going off track. So back to the thing. So I was lucky with the bodyboarding where my generation, we had a crew that were really pushing it, and I'm not saying I was better than these guys and stuff. And you know, I was lucky to beat Ryan Hardy in a few contests, kind of thing. But I was filming a level on this first movie where I was living in my car. I'd dropped out of uni. I'd told Rip Curl to keep their sponsorship and look out for Shednine, and they were like, "What's Shednine?" And I said to the guy, the team manager, "You'll see." And he was looking at me, this kid's cooked, like this kid's crazy. Anyway, I'd already printed the first shirts and we were selling them out of the back of the car. So then I just walked away from it for a bit, and not walked away from it, but walked away from the whole, like, you know, trying to suck off your sponsors and stuff, and just went, I'm just going to do me. And then I think crew liked it. And so, you know, what was I saying? That T-shirt there was printed in Torquay.
That's one of the first ones?
The very first one.
Show it to the camera up here.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the first one.
Well, it was basically that font there.
Yeah.
That one's got some of the original team riders in it. You know, like Gumby, he came to the pool last night, Sammy Kenny, Dan Moran, who visited yesterday, Roosty, and Brendan, who was on the snow. So that was snow, moto, surf, bodyboard, skate. That's
Right.
That's an
And what
early
year was
logo.
that?
I cut all the photos and we pressed them down. Well, that movie dropped. So I took a few years to make my first movie. I worked in that was about year 2000. Whenever the GST, the generally shit tax came in. So that movie sold all over Australia. But yeah, I spent a few years, and I was on a level where I was not quite thinking I was as good as like your Ben Players and your Ryan Hardys and Damien Kings and, you know, the young guys like Mitch Rawlins. So these guys ended up being, in my opinion, like the forefront of bodyboarding in the world. Mm-hmm. Along with the whole scene, they just lifted the whole scene. But I always looked up to the crew that could drop knee and lay down on a bodyboard or stood up on a bodyboard finless and surfed it like a surfboard. So,
and that was happening then?
Yeah.
Stand-up
bodyboarding was bigger then than it is now. Drop knee bodyboarding was bigger then than it is now. It's not like, I don't know, like that. Some people say that the surf industry tried to crush it and whatnot, but I don't know, man. It's just things change and things come in and out. But there was definitely a lot of us started brands. I started Shednine because of that a little bit, because of that feeling and like, why not take something back and be able to give something back to others, and felt like no one was doing much for anyone on this coast at that time, unless it was just like local shapers or local crew doing little bits and pieces or whatever, but there wasn't like anyone getting paid to surf or skate or snowboard or bodyboard or anything from the peninsula.
Yep.
And it's still really, you know, it's been a little bit limited there too, with actual someone getting paid from here, like significantly for those sports. And I hope that it changes in our time, because there's definitely the consistency of waves and there's definitely the talent. But I think also that the shape of the peninsula, we end at Portsea and then there's no waves past Balnarring, so we don't have that on-flow traffic like the Great Ocean Road or the Phillip Island crew keep going down the East Coast and back up or whatever, or like say Byron Bay where everyone just comes through, and so we get a lot of domestic Melbourne-based tourism. So it suits the 3000 podcast. All the crew come through to the Shednine, say, "Hey, dude, yeah, bro, got the flow if you want to know." So yeah, I guess, you know, you kind of go around in bit circles here trying to think it all back through.
Had you got onto the stand-up boards at this stage?
Yeah, I had a little green fish that was a snap board that we just cut the nose off. That was called the sick fish. It was a 5/6 cut up second-hand board. I sprayed it green and then round nosed it. And, I was snowboarding from 18 bits and pieces, odd days, odd here. Picked it up pretty quickly especially from being right into drop knee on a bodyboard. It just was a natural thing. Snowboarding came really quickly. But I was never that great at skating, and the water was when I was in the water that I felt most at home.
And what about the camera? You picking up the camera because you're obviously putting out the video.
Yeah, I was one of the first people to have a mini DV cam, and I've kept all my old cameras. I've got a box full of broken cameras, and I'd live in the car. And I'd work 6 days a week, 6 nights a week, Portsea, mowing lawns for Steve Watson Garden Maintenance, and he was really supportive of me, like travelling. And my mate Chris Scurra, he was working with me. We'd do 6 days a week, 6 nights a week. So we did the Portsea Bike Cafe next to the pub each night, and we'd do 6 days a week in the gardening. But we'd have a couple of hours off in between. We'd mostly just go surf Portsea and then go to the other job. We were like on the Johnny Howard surf team. Yes. And we were getting paid cash in hand, not much cash too. Like I think I was on $12 an hour. He was on 15 for gardening. Like it wasn't big money. But once and we had a competition. You couldn't have a competition who could save the most money each week. It was because he was on $3 an hour for me more than me because he was like one level up in the gardening as the boss. He was a little bit older. But so it was who could spend the least. And we'd literally go each week, and then we'd be grabbing at the Portsea Bike Cafe the people's meals off the plates and put as we'd go to put it in the bin, like that's mine, that's his, and then like divvying up our lunch for the next day's gardening. Yeah. And then we go straight over from there to depending on whether it was going to be good surf the next day and how tired or whatever, but a fair few nights we'd go down and literally have a shower beside each other, wash all the smell of the grease off, and then go to the connie at sober.
Yeah.
At 1:30 in the morning, cut van out the front and go in and see how the night went at the end, and come in there clean, sober, and then see if the girls liked us or not, compared to whoever, and catch up with everyone, and then we'd sleep in our cars and be mowing lawns at 7:30 a lot, but it wasn't like full strict. It wasn't like, hey, Spocko, look, it's going to be cooking at spot X and we want this morning off. Or if it's like fully cooking, it was roughly we're working 6 days, 6 nights, and we were saving good money for back then by living in our cars and eating free food.
What was the plan for the money? What did you want to do with the money?
Well, I wanted to start Shednine and go around Australia and live in my panel van that by then I was doing up and kind of living in, and he went and bought his first boat up in the Mentawais, and now he's got multiple boats. It's called Sumatran Safaris.
Yeah, cool.
And he runs some incredible boat trips now. That's really blown up for him. He's been through some challenging times. The earthquakes and divorces and whatever, and different challenges financially. COVID, all that stuff that, obviously he's been through the ringer, but I ended up on one of his first boats and we ran out of food. We were filming for that movie. All we had was rice and beer left and water, and he was doing a visa run. We're stuck at Macaronis, which is the most perfect wave in the Mentawais, and the waves are like 4 to 5 foot, and he's gone and there's not another boat in now. If you go there's so many boats trying to get these waves. And so I pretty spoilt to get those early days, not only around Victoria with those crew there and all the crew on the peninsula, and we get really good waves here on the peninsula, and a lot of it is sort of pushed under the radar a bit, which is, in a way, it's a bit of a blessing and it's a bit of a curse, and it's a tough one because for kids who want to be sponsored, they want to get the media done, but then also there's that pressure that we don't want to give away the spots. So it's like, how do you meet in the middle? And I've been, you get caught up in that a bit, and it's in your head a bit because there's spots that we don't, not just me, but people don't want everyone coming in to fly in from interstate to take on photos of all these waves. And on the other hand, there's kids coming up trying to get sponsored, and what are they just going to get photos of Gonna Matter every day? So it's like, it is a hard one because you want the kids to do well, but then, then they get a bit older and it's like, hey, but don't post this and don't post that. And it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I guess for me, that's where Indo was good because I can surf in Indo, and these days, wherever you go, you end up photographed in the magazines. And photographed, and I've ended up being blessed. Like that was last year in Indo. That's G-Land.
Yeah, wow.
That was
mag's that?
That was Smorgasborder last year. And then you can see across the different boards, and that was a nice one last year. That was my birthday. That day, that was the day after my birthday. The first one there, and like this one here's a good one. I got the cover of that one. There's an article about growing up, riding together, shredding forever. And that's just Rye, the beach near the shop at the back beach there.
And the back of the shop there as well?
That's at Point Leo there on the foil. And, those waves are sort of like all clear where crew don't mind you shooting them. But there's stuff that we just sort of don't post anymore. And, but yeah, growing up with my daughter, that's been one of the most beautiful things. She's been on board since before she can remember, since before she can walk. Mm-hmm. She's 11. That's Chloe. So she skates, surfs, snowboards, and she doesn't ever remember not doing it. And to be a dad, I'm so busy in the shop. Shop can be quite demanding, It can be a bit of a prison as well because you're in there so many hours. Like we did 14 years where we were open 9 till 7 days except Christmas. And it was easier before, but...
So we haven't got to the point of... Oh, well, let's do that. We'll do the magazines.
I'll show you a couple of these mags. Just gives you a bit of credibility, a bit of cover, an article about all the different boards that I ride, and I think surf, skate, drop knee, bodyboarding, snowboarding, all that sort of thing. You got Tracks magazine, the Alaya, finless surfing, snowboarding. Different.
You got the Rosebud shell there as well.
Yeah, the sound shells.
Yeah.
Was that a varial flip, like a disco flip, switch like. Body varial flip. I didn't ollie off the end of it. I was never the greatest skater. I was just a little street rat. But I don't know what's in this one. But you got to put your ads in, and we've been honoured to have people like Marty Paradisus, multiple extra large big wave surfer, award winner from Ship's Turns. He helped run the shop when we opened. RJ, multiple Australian bowl riding champion. Like sponsored and living beside our store. And Kingy, Damien King. He's 3 times world bodyboard champ, repping our stuff, repping our brand.
That's cool.
Yeah, 9 lives, the 9 lives of the multi-boarder. And, the foiling comes in and whatnot. That's been a big mental health savior, a lot of injuries.
So tell us about the foils for people that don't know.
A hydrofoil, you paddle in, it's like mine's 4'10", so it's about this big. And it's got a wing that's 75 centimetres down, and it just means for me, like basically you're hovering above, you're paddling like a surfboard, you get up and then you're flying around waves that were boring now because you've had all these incredible waves, and then suddenly it's fun again.
It's like you're hovering above.
Yeah,
like you're
and you're going
hoverboard.
really quick. You've got full high speed velocity on waves that were tiny. And you would have been bored. And I was getting a bit of depression because I'd come back from these trips to Indo. So I started out in the jungle in Sumbawa like years ago, like around 15 years ago, with a little like rented a place for years and put a little villa together on top of it, and then that sort of kicked off, and now a lot of people are doing the same. So that's kind of become competitive. And then before COVID, like went in and did some more exploration of ideas over there. going back to those magazines, maybe I'll just leave it. I'll just say, like, to be in print's a blessing, and to be alive in that time where magazines were in print, and to be one of the only people that's probably been in most of the major surf and bodyboard magazines in Australia. I mean, people are chasing their second, their second investment property, or their, whatever their next $1 million. But at the end of the day, mate, all we've got is our memories, and all these memories of the travel and the wild times we got to have when we were young. Like, I've been so blessed with so much water time in my life. And these films, like, just not subscribing to the normal 9 to 5 and just going, I'm just going to go to do something completely different. I'm not going to become an engineer. I'm just going to go and follow my heart. And, so it's 26 years later. So,
You've talked about the first video there. What other VHSs have we got around this sort of 2000s era?
Oh, yeah. That was the first one, Welcome to the White House. And there was a lot of crew from the Peninsula involved in that, but also the world's best at surf, skate, bodyboard, moto, snow incorporated, and a team of crew that, we'd be selling clothes out of the back of the car and whatnot. And then, right through to various skate and snow DVDs and whatnot, and then right through the DVD era, motocross, we did 3 freestyle motocross films. That one ended up being Australia's highest seller, The Return. I think we did 80 grand on that one. And this one here was one that I just did, which we gave away. It had over 1,500 people. I aimed this mostly for the local crew, 1,500 people from the Peninsula on it.
Wow.
So we did 8,000 copies of that on DVD, and if people spent $100 in our shop, we just gave them a free DVD. So they're all around the place. But back to, it kind of goes in loops with this story a bit, because for me, it's been one, I got to kind of run away from the 9 to 5 a bit and go and do my own thing a bit. And then there's a lot of time I ended up back on the tools, working for chippies, working, busking up the coast, or gardening again in the summers, or, I think there's 57 odd jobs, roughly around there, from high school to when I opened my shop. And but these DVDs were mostly distributed by other crew, and music was put on the back burner. But to have gone from where there was a point in my 20s where I kind of went pretty loose, and things were sort of falling apart. I was probably partying a little bit too hard, late 20s, and we were at every skate event in Melbourne. Like if Dustin was skating something, like, we got to get up there. Or like if John O'Porter was doing a backflip in Adelaide, and I remember mowing lawns, going, I've got to be the one that films the first backflip in Australia. And then like he ended up dying that year doing a backflip, and then but we were at and it wasn't just me; it was like the whole crew. And so Shednine was inspired by a film called.
You forgot?
Oh, I forget. So Shednine was inspired by a group of us, and we were sitting around up Frankston Way, and we were watching a movie called Fresno Smooth. Mm-hmm. And it had I think you could probably all look up Fresno Smooth on YouTube, kids, if you want to see it. And it had Rob Machado, the surfer, Seth Enslow, Carey Hart, like the big icons, best skaters in California at the time. I think there's a few strippers or famous, porn stars in it and stuff like that. And it was Bubba was in it from the Crusties, and so it was just all these different crews with different genres all together making this comedy movie about Seth, letting Seth ride this ride that the council didn't want him to. And we were like, how cool is that? We should, and that was a bit of an influence on getting these crew together and starting Shednine, not just for the locals of the peninsula, but to put Australians on the map and to push the level up. But just like, fuck, who cares what you ride? Let's just go. And so we're partying with and to get to my age and to be able to say, not throwing a big note that But, you know, like, remember when they threw partying with Larry Linkogel and Robbie Madison's there in the morning, and he's thrown the fucking chair out of the 20th floor in the hotel in Melbourne, and like the TV are there, and we're like, you know, partying with Deegan from the Metal Militia, and just some of the shenanigans, and like, you know, like even being friends now with, you know, like filming Tass Pappas back in the day, and I was to them just then like just another camera guy. And for now, him to be bringing his son into my shop and come and surf, he's had like 3 or 4 surfs with us in the last 3 weeks, and he's doing well, you know, like considering how loose his story is. Yeah. And you know, to see some of these guys like Robbie Madison on a dirt bike in the earlier motocross movies, I think that one there, No Return, and that's probably on YouTube. Maybe some of them got ripped down and put a few up because of soundtrack issues and stuff. A couple are gone, but you know, he's riding Shednine stickers with Robbie Adelberg before they had any stickers.
Yeah,
and wearing our hats at events, and
so that makes you proud.
Well, we'd have our little merch stand; it'd sell out wherever we went. Like we'd go up and do a like motocross show and take up $5,000 worth of merch, have a little thing. Those guys have got the stickers. There was nothing left, and then I go, oh, I can get to the next one. So I had a lot of freedom and we had a lot of fun, and there was a lot of partying. I can't deny it, but it kind of all caught up with me in my mid-20s, and things were going a little bit off track. And then, you know, I guess I got a little bit too loose, and there are some things I regret doing. You know, I guess we all do. Mm-hmm. But you know, if I wasn't forgiven for some of the dumb shit that I've done, I'd never have got to here, and I'd never be able to give back. You know, and to have come from those times, and you know, those guys were my heroes, and same with the bodyboarding, the loose guys. And I feel really privileged that to have come from a time without a phone, to have all these magazines and stuff, to then be featured in these magazines, to looking at these movies, to then be making these movies, to then opening a shop. And it was like, so I got a government grant, right? I was a bit lost, and I was like, you know, I'd been partying a bit hard, and this one was still on the way. There was another one, like Off My Lid, a bodyboard comedy, and I never released that one. It was going to be too loose. And I was like, you know, I had to pull the pin on that. You know, and we were inspired by Jackass, and all the crew hanging around, like all the boys were hanging around, all the crew, and girls, and everyone was getting loose, and you know, we're partying, and the crew were jumping out of trees and trying to be like Jackass, and you know, we were all influenced by that. But now my heroes are so different at 47. Because I'm like, fuck, I'm not 20 anymore. And I've had the knee surgeries. I've got the shoulder surgeries. My body hurts. I have to like really work at my health just to keep going. But like, I'm lucky that I've got every 6 months, usually I've got an Indo swing coming up because of what I've set up over there. Mm-hmm. And that keeps me motivated to keep fit. So, you know, the idols that I have now are different. They're people that no one's heard of. Like at G-Land last year on the big day, the waves are twice the size of the ceiling in here. And, you know, you would fit the whole shop inside the barrel. And there's a 75-year-old dentist who's retired and lives in Bali. And his name's Larry. He's Hawaiian. And he's like taking off deep. And he's like, the waves are fucking big. They're scary. And, you know, you're over shallow coral finger, rip you in pieces, smash your board. You could eat. You know, people have been scalped, people have died, you know, boards get... that last year in Indo, I did G-Land, I did East Coast, Bali, Padang, G-Land, Deserts, Lakeys over 5 weeks and did some renos and stuff, and I saw at least 100 people with snap boards, broken leggies or worse, you know, broken faces, cut up bodies. If I actually took a photo of it all, it'd blow people away. And I came through that one last year and I just touched wood and went, you know, I'm glad... Before I went, all right, well, I'm going to be going in a couple of months. So I went full sober, 2 months, carnivore, Wim Hof, every day. You know, didn't drink one drop of alcohol at all, and training between customers on the floor. And that's kind of around a year ago now. So it's kind of what I'm looking at now is to start training for the Indo season now. Mm-hmm. I've been a little bit slack with it, but yeah. So back to that's kind of roughly like how your heroes change, and you know my heroes now are older guys that are really healthy or on the carnivore mostly, and you know looking at a much more sober, and just to be able to surf till I'm 70 would be the biggest blessing at 47 or 80. You know, like, yep. And it's possible. I believe it.
People are doing it. So you tell us about, you got the government grant, so Shednine becomes a brick and mortar store. So obviously we'll talk about the challenges that are involved in owning a physical store in this day and age. But let's talk about the opening of the shop, because it has been, you said, almost 19 years.
Yeah, it'll be 19 years on October 22nd. So we started 2006. I went and did a short business course to get the NEIS grant. Because again, at the time, I went back on, back on the rock and roll
Surf team.
I'd been on and off it a bit over the years, depending on situations. But I was on it at the time, and you could do this thing, the New Enterprise Initiative Scheme. I think it's still around. But the New Enterprise Initiative Scheme, NEIS for short, meant that they basically paid me the dole for a year, but no tax on further income made. So back then, with the rent then, it pretty much nearly covered my rent for a year.
Wow.
So it was like being given a shop for a 3 years rent. Free start, which was pretty cool. I'm not sure how you could get that now, with the cost of rents and it was again, timing, blessed with the opportunity, seized the moment. We didn't know, we opened in October, we didn't have an FPOS machine. We didn't know if we were going to make it till Easter. We didn't care because the rest was a bonus. It didn't matter. I mean, so they wouldn't give me an FPOS machine. Most of the surf industry didn't want to know me, but the motocross crew frothed it. So we had
the surf guys weren't keen because of the bodyboarding.
Well, no, not because of the bodyboarding. Bodyboard brands got around it straight away because of my background. Motocross guys got around it because no one else was doing it here, but there were a lot of other independent surf shops around, and so there was that pressure from them not to supply him. I don't want to go too far down the politics of it all because it doesn't really help anyone. But you keep your chin up and you keep fighting with what you've got, and we there's at the start, my idea was that we would put in all of the local shapers boards. That was the dream. But the reality is that you try and do that, but then the kids go down the beach and see them at the car park and buy one off them anyway. So it kind of, some of the things that I envisaged did work out and some didn't. But at the end of the day, I remember that first summer, it was pretty wild. So we got Marty Paradisus, the big wave surfers there. Dancy was in the first photo. He lives in Mornington now. He was living in Rye. We were making that movie. And that one I sold from the shop. So I had all the motocross crew hanging out. We were selling brands like Metal Militia, Skin, SRH, Balls Deep, Unit. And that stuff was huge. People wanted it and no one else was selling it. So we had that straight up, and then all the bodyboard brands wanted in. And then, slowly but surely the surf brands, after they realised that we weren't going anywhere, they came over. But for example, the first summer we didn't have an FPOS machine. So crew would come in and go, can I buy a wetsuit? And we didn't have there's still no ATM out the back. It was a dirt road. All the crew who lived around Shednine then, it was a different demographic. It wasn't all wealthy people's second holiday homes and stuff. And not that it all is now, but there was, what I'm trying to say, there was a lot more room for younger crew to have a share rent house affordable by the Rye Back Beach.
Yep. And
maybe they were on the rock and roll, or they did 3 days concreting a week and they surfed their brains out. They could all come in and afford a weddy and lay by a board, and there wasn't so much competition with direct online, so that most of the brands didn't have an online store. Your suppliers weren't undercutting you at the teeth, doing flash sales for the November,
Black Friday.
Black Friday, make a fool of your brand sale kind of thing. You didn't have to worry about that so much, and it was never easy. It was never easy, but it never will be. But so that was the demographic. But we didn't have an FPOS machine, for example, on that first summer. And I remember crew coming in and we had a skate ramp out the back. We had the eskies out the back, and we had so you'd come in and go, and I go, hey, Maloney, how you going, mate? And you go, oh, yeah, I'm going to buy that wetsuit. can you do card? I go, nah, just how much is it? Oh yeah, we'll do, mates rates, we'll knock 15% off. All right, that comes to 300. Can you just go and buy 6 slabs from the bottle next door?
I like this theory, yeah.
Right? And so then they'd bring the slabs out the back and we'd pile them up in the kitchen, and then we'd crack the slabs and put them in the fucking bath on ice. So when everyone came in from a thing, they'd buy like a 6-pack and hang out.
Yeah.
And so it was like a kind of, and I was living there, my wife was living there, and it was a pretty wild fucking time. And you had this, like, we still had that whole moto, surf, skate, bodyboard, snowboard crew, like, a lot of the crew from the peninsula who skate or they surf, or they surf, they snowboard, or they do 3, or they bodyboard and they surf, or they do a few more. So we were reaching a demographic where in the past it was like you either surfed or there wasn't many, like what you said, like multi-boarders or watermen, and it was a time where people were starting to ride lots of different things, and there's a lot of crew definitely who surf, skate and snowboard from home. And these days, like, crew will come in and go, oh, do you sell snowboards? I'm like, yeah, well, most of the crew who surf here, a fairly big amount of them get into the snow. And then so we started a snow bus driving crew to the snow like 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. And, we've taken 3,000 people to the snow safely there and back over those years, mostly me driving. And, but yeah, so we opened the shop. It was, and then by Easter we were like, all right, well, this is sort of working, and how are we going to get through the winter? And it was, let's get a snow gear in. And then suddenly the surf brands are going, well, they've got through and they're starting to stock us a little bit. And, a lot of the reps loved me and were good to me. And, it's not like you need every surf brand either. You don't, if you've got a plethora across surf, skate, bodyboard, snowball, and you're selling a lot of your own gear, I think, and with us from the start, like, this T-shirt, it's printed in Australia. Mm-hmm. That's hand sewn on in Australia. That blank, maybe, it's a Chinese blank, but at least it's printed here. Mm-hmm. It's hand sewn here. That's embroidered here. You know what I mean? So our surfboards are handmade locally on the peninsula, every Shednine board. Our skate decks are like Canadian maple American glue, but they're printed, the graphics are screened on in Australia. Mm-hmm. So
wherever you can, you're trying to do it in Australia.
And we make Australian-made clothing still, like 100% Australian-made Shednine tallwoods. Like some of the winters we sold thousands of them, like... well, I remember like 2015, 16, 17, we were doing like 40, 50 grand. Maybe is that there? Yeah, that's about right. I remember, doing pop-up shops at Falls, Thredbo, Perisher, Bulla, every mountain north of us except for Bawbaw, where they'd like let me set up in the pub in spring. I'd throw one of the staff members in the shop and I'd just go party and go snowboarding, and we'd be making films of that. And that film was called The Road to Nowhere, and that was good. That actually got shut down by COVID. I was about to release that, and then the lockdowns hit, and also like my daughter was at an age where I really wanted to spend time with her, and I fell in love with the foiling, and so after being to this point, I made this pretty cool movie, and then I've just put little bits out on Instagram because I didn't want to go and do all that partying again with all the crew, because I didn't want to be away from my kid for as much.
Different stage of your life.
Different stage, bro. And, I could, instead of lining up in a lift line, keeping up with the hot rats to go film them in the park, I could just be foiling somewhere in Western Port by myself with no lift line, getting a similar adrenaline hit and a peace of mind, drop my daughter to school, do that, and then go to work, and saving on money and so just, but yeah, we got the custom surfboards. We've the bodyboards that Shednine bodyboards are known as good as anything in the world as far as the quality of what we've produced, and snowboards with 20 graphics, pick your own custom rocker flex, camber, stiffness, whether you want bamboo, carbon inlay, the works. So we're offering that online. Then you could design your own Australian handmade tall hoodie. So there's been a lot of...
The customization stuff's really cool. I had a look yesterday. It's good, man.
Yeah. Well, it was good for you to actually, like, it was a blessing for you to come and have a look at the shop because, I mean, you obviously don't get to see all the crew all over Melbourne that we're up to your 150th, 60th or something.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, we're just over 150 now.
Yeah.
So we've done a few. But aside from the physical shop, also your intention was to try and give back by sponsoring young groms and young people. So that's
absolutely.
a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've always prided ourselves on our team. And even though we did pull back on moto for various reasons later on, it was just getting too commercialised and owned by huge brands. And, maybe we'll dip our toes back in there again because a lot of the crew are asking us to. But also you need to be on the road. And, we've got a great team at the moment, and there's a lot of bright things in the future. Like we've got, just even those ones that I've mentioned there to have had those big names rock our brand over the years is like a childhood's dream come true, and then locally at the moment we've got there's Super Groms, there's a really strong board riders club, the bodyboard club still kicks along. I mean, bodyboarding's not what it once was, but if you look, I don't know, maybe other people in Victoria would say differently, but I feel like within we're in Dramana right now, yeah, and I'd say between Dramana and Sorrento and sort of like Balnarring way, you've probably got within 15 kilometres radius of our shop, you've probably got, well, we sponsor the world's best kneeboarder, a junior world champ kneeboarder, Owen Fairweather. You've got a really strong club with as far as strength of numbers in the girls now, where we've got a really strong board riders club that own the club. The future's looking really good there. We sponsor a few crew through that club, and even guys like Marty Paradises, he's still charging ship's turns all these years later, and used to be a little bit wild too when he's young, but he's just like me, focused on longevity. And you've got little Lily Sheriff, she's doing really well with her skateboarding. Little Ned Morrison, he's killing it. He's just got back from an amazing run to Belco and a broken foot all summer and just straight back into some mental stuff. And these kids are just so small, doing what you could never imagine was possible at 12 years old, 13 years old. Little Raf, I think he's 12, and we just helped him, get on XL. We put him on Shednine. We got him on XL wetsuits, and then, he's just picked up a Carve eyewear and apparel company. We just got him on Huey's Choice wax through the shop. So, looking at young kids coming up, and also kids like Zepp, who live 3 or 4 doors down. He started off on Shednine. We got him on Z-Flex. These days he plays his own game. He's happy for us to retag anything he posts. But, he's now on Vans, Bones, wow, Independent, Smoke Beer, Skateboards, Soggy Bones, and he plays, he's pretty humble, but his skating's incredible. And I remember the day they built the ramp, 100 metres from my shop, and his parents, Sal and Drew, they did an Inch Fest, which was a huge thing, that has been, with the insurances and the post lockdown rises of things. We were lucky to get, I think it was it 7 inches? See, how many Inch Fest were there? 7? 6, yeah.
I was there for the last one. I just moved down here.
Yeah, and it's just things like that, and it's a different time. It's a challenging time for retail, but yeah, we've always given back to not only that, through the legacy of the shop, not just our own team. There's been crew like Mikey Barber, who's a freak aerial surfer. He won, I think, every heat for 14 months in the Board Riders Club, and then he fell out of a tree and broke heaps of his body pretty badly, but he's recovered enough to surf, meet him well. And, even I put a little shout out to the crew that support me, from around Australia, because I don't have an online store, man, because I'm that busy. But people are messaging me going, "Hey, bro, I'm on the Gold. You remember me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro." He's like, "Oh, my mate wants this wetty. My mate wants that board. My mate wants these fins. Can you get it sorted?" And then a lot of the time, my suppliers will direct ship it. I'm doing it by text, and I'm not even always seeing the product. So it's like direct shipping without a website, and that really helps. I can't do it in school holidays because we're flat out trying to survive, like do the hours and make the money while the people are here. And then you kind of go into this and, so we've given a lot back. We did like a lot of Baja's biggest parties over the years. You'd be at the start, you'd be sponsoring anything. Like people would come in and go, can you sponsor, the Rye Footy Club, or could you sponsor like Rye Kindergarten, or these kids want to do the life saving, and we'd do what we could, and we, even if it was $50 or a lot of the time these days we're giving vouchers to, we're giving some money to the Peninsula Board Riders Club this year. We're giving vouchers to every finalist in every division for Peninsula Board Riders Club. For that's across the adults and the Super Groms. Vouchers to everyone in the recent Mornington Peninsula round of the Vic bodyboarding state round. The Malediction Club, Shednine vouchers. So you kind of not, you also, if they want to get their product in the voucher, they've got to come in too. So you're sort of seeing it work where you're giving and taking a bit.
Yep.
And you really need to work out where your give and take line is these days, because there's always someone who'll ask for more. And look, there's been times, I don't want to name them, there's a couple of riders I've given $1,000 a year on to sticker us up and whatnot, and for different sports, and more than people would think, and wherever that ends up or whatever, like that's all good. But like, yeah, anything to do with the local kids and the local community, I'm always scouting for local talent, and you're also looking for ones that want to remain loyal too, because loyalty is a big part. There's no point me sponsoring some kid and then he's desperate to be sponsored by you, and then the next week he wants to ride for a different shop in the city, or because there's kids like that they don't really, not that they mean to do it, they don't really understand what they want.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like what can be a waste of time. But in saying that, like, you're giving out a lot of your time and a little bit of your product or whatever, and you're supporting them and you're trying to nurture them so that the brands in the store want to support them, and you're helping them connect a relationship to that sales rep or to that team manager that through the shop.
Yeah.
And,
shops do play a big part in that, because when brands aren't going to sponsor somebody, the first inevitable thing is the shops do, and that should snowball. So you can understand the kids get a shop sponsorship like Shednine and then go, I want to ride for that company, so that you can sort of get the loyalty that they want to progress.
Yeah, and when you got, we stock hundreds of brands, so there's plenty of opportunity for kids coming up. And it also, like, it may just be a stepping stone. I mean, I don't like it when a kid does that like next month, but if a kid rides for us for a couple of years and then it becomes a stepping stone, and we've really helped them and they've been part of it, but then they go, you know what, Eddie, and they come in and go, mate, I've been offered this by someone, and I'm stoked. Like, I remember Biscuit, Brad Saunders, so he's had, covers of Slam magazine. He's on Fast Times now. I remember he was 6 years old. He came into the shop. He goes, I want to be the gnarliest street skater in the world. 6-year-old kid, man. And I'm just like, he goes, oh, by the way, and his dad, Pete, he's a legend. And he goes, oh, we're going to America. I'm gonna ollie the Hollywood High.
Really?
16, 6 or 7. Yes, I think it was 6, man. And I like, a fucking few days later, I get sent the clip, and I'm like, and then I've seen him break himself over and over and over. And anyone who knows skating knows Biscuit, Brad Saunders, and I hope you have a listen to this one, Biscuit. So then his parents sold up down here, and they went up to Ballarat and opened like an Airbnb, but they built him his own skate park because the peninsula pressure and the financial pressure of up there and whatever it was, but they went up there. But yeah, he's incredible too. He's another example of where they stuck around for a few years and did what I call the right thing, but then when the opportunity came, like, super proud of them because we were part of that journey, and we were part of Robbie Madison's journey, even though like he'd look back and go, wow, Robbie Adelberg or Dancy, or like those guys look at the movies and go, that was one of the maddest movies ever made, and we're in it. Like, you made it.
For people that do want to sort of reach out when it's not too busy, they can text the shop, and you can try and work something out to ship them
I
stuff.
love it.
Okay.
I love it. Yes, please do touch base if you want anything. Just send me a DM on Insta, and I'm packing stuff daily. It really helps. That's one of the biggest things crew can do, especially when it's not school holidays, especially through winter.
Yeah.
If you want a Shednine clothing pack, look, I think the future is, going to be more online, but I need the right person to come along, and or maybe I need to advertise for the right person to come along or something. But there's a full-time job there for someone else, and for me, it's sort of like once you turn that online realm on, it's a monster too. You got to keep up with it. And I'm running some Airbnbs, and I'm running my shop, and I'm trying to be a dad, and I'm doing 60, 70 hours. It was only so much when I'm trying to surf and then have a trip away or two a year and a little bit of snowboard, and the years are going by. But, I haven't quite nailed that link between online, Shednine and online, even though we've had a few attempts. So
okay. You've tried, yeah.
Yeah, we've had goes at it, but you're just kind of that busy with either, who's in front of you in the school holidays or... And, I like to do a bit of training these days when it's quiet and all that stuff. And
So people, the best, if you are down this way, you can go into the shop, and that's the best way to experience it, because it's one of the old school skate surf shops that don't really exist anymore. That's not a chain. It's you. The owner is behind the counter. Do you know what I mean? So that's the best way to experience it. If people can't get down here, they can text you and they can try and buy some product from you directly as well.
And I've had some great staff over the time, and I've got to give a shout out to those staff that have done what they've done for the love and for because of they want to be involved in that scene. They rather than something else, they could have done anything else, but they wanted to be a part of Shednine, and they wanted to succeed, and also wanted me to succeed. Also, like me to ring up and go, "Hey mate, I'm going to jump on a flight tomorrow. I'm about to press book on the flights. I want to chase 10-foot this and that and rah-de-rah. I want to go to surf ships turns by myself, don't tell anyone, and then go and surf it by myself, or go and surf deserts or, by myself, and just done some sort of secret goals of my own, but in a time where it was a little bit more easy to do that, or like going but there was a lot of years where we did huge hours, and for me now it's a bit harder because I really want to spend more time with my daughter, and the cost of living, the I don't know if it's so much that the COVID aftermath kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about that, because obviously we all hate COVID, but it's part of our lives. It's happened.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that from a shop owner's perspective.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was really hard. I mean, a lot of people, and I think, listening to the 3000 podcast, I suggest you guys have a look and scroll at your favourite, whoever's your favourite on there, whether it's a skater or a hip hop artist or a musician or a rapper, or I think I'm the first surfer, hey?
There's people that dabble, but I think I'd say you're the first surfer that's probably got magazine articles and covers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cool. Well, COVID was hard. Like, so where I was, I felt like it was clearly, as you guys have been to the shop, it's not metropolitan zoned, but suddenly it was metropolitan zoned. So,
which is fucking weird.
And so I'm copying like grief from a lot of sides. At the start, I wasn't sure what to think, and then, I've had to borrow a huge amount of coin to keep what I nearly lost everything in Indo, except for one place. I nearly lost it all there because obviously that was in lockdown for so long, and those guys in Bali suffered heaps. But being a free place and a place of a destination, that they've recovered really quickly compared to down here, where the cost of living and whatnot has changed. That demographic that made my place really appealing when I opened is now like a lot of people are doing it tougher. They even just that new land tax and stuff. But so with the lockdowns, I think it was 269 days. I think it was 5 lockdowns where I was told I wasn't allowed to open, and I started going down the rabbit hole as we all did in our different ways, and everyone was starting to turn on each other, and I was like this and that and rah-de-rah. And look, you can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want, and, people would say, like, I'm a right-wing extremist, neo-Nazi, because I'm going to the protests after they were legal. I didn't go to them until they were legal, but then I went to every protest in Melbourne, Canberra, fly in, fly out with my skateboard type jobs and some of these signs and stuff. But I made it through anyway. Look, I had to borrow a lot of money, which is, it's tied me up a lot now, and it makes me a bit angry. It's like that's what I'm paying off each week could be paying a staff member 3 days' wages for the rest of my life to go and film a kid skating, or for me to while I sit in the shop and go for a surf. But at the moment, I'm just feeling that brunt of that, the COVID debt, I call it. Yep. And I know it's not just me, and I know people lost a hell of a lot more, and there's people that have sold everything and lost everything, and going to Canberra like really woke me up to that, because you just saw I met a lot of people that had given up everything to not get the whack, and I went through the whole lockdown, and I was standing up against, like Agenda 2030 and what I see, even there was a sign when I drove up here today, the problem is the parties. It was just when I drove up on the freeway, like
I saw that, yeah.
It's like the two wings of the bird, like you vote Liberal or Labor, is it going to save you, like kind of thing, like I don't, but for us of all places to cop the world's longest lockdown was really hard. And, they were dark times, man. I lost 8 friends to suicide in the first one.
That's fucked.
Just from Padua, Peninsula, Mornington, Mount Eliza and that uni. So, and they were all except for one, they were all 40 to 50-year-olds, and most of them were fathers with kids and families and providers. So in one hand, you're like trying to protect the elderly and vulnerable from something that wasn't even really proven, while you're putting them on, you're rushing them off to hospital on obviously, everyone's got their own opinion on what COVID was, and I believe it was, what was manufactured by certain Americans in Wuhan, and whether it was accidentally or deliberately released or whatever, it all seems pretty well planned by, You look at the pandemic side, and you got to go down every rabbit hole, but I don't want to go into it too much with like all that, because I just go on for way too long. But at the end of the day, man, like, they were medicating people with remdesivir, right? And then those people weren't waking up. And they were doing that all over the world. And the numbers in certain countries, when I looked at what was going on with the whack, like they're whacking people in countries, and the virus or whatever, like the statistics were going up as soon as they did it. Before it even came here, and I'm like, this doesn't work. So I was against it once I started figuring it out, and watching Dan Andrews lock us all down for that long and say stuff like, and there was a few people out at Ryback Beach that watching the sunset, and this isn't the time to watch the sunset, and while he's got us locked in his little lockdown, Torquay surf shops are killing it because they're regional, Phillip Island. And anyone on the peninsula who's survived it, who's got their own business, well, kudos to you, because you got to be strong, or you've borrowed a lot of money, or you got to have a real heart, And all of the 3,000 crew that you mostly, most of them would have been affected, and that's why this is a good place for me to speak about. I've been on a couple of podcasts, and I listened to them, and I just told them to rip it down in the end because it was just all too much jibber jabber, but. So was the whole of COVID, too much jibbity jab. And then I made it right through. I made it 269 days of lockdown. I didn't know it was the end. But by then, dude, I was so fucking broken. I was so sick of it. I'd got it telling COVID officers to get the F out of my shop. And I stayed open for the second year. But, like, people were, like, off me for it because... They'd come in, the COVID health safety office, and I'd go, so what was your name? And they were trying to intimidate me. I was that angry, bro. Like, what was your name? I said, well, what's your name? What did you do for work before you were a COVID officer? I said, this is clearly not Metropolitan. And what's your boss's phone number? Because I'll be on the phone because I'm going to sue you guys. And they'd be like, what? We're just here to tell you to shut. Well, I'm not shutting. Second year. But even though not shutting, no one was allowed from 5 kilometres anyway. So it was pointless. In the end, I just went, fuck it, I'll just go surfing, you know. And so, yeah, it was really rough. And then, so I made it right through. And then I didn't know I was right through, though, because the lockdowns were just looming and looming and looming. And I was lucky enough to escape a couple and go surfing because I reckon, like, I was borderline mental health. Like, crew were, you know, and then so I went to the doctors and I said, look, I went to like 7 different doctors down this way between, you know, all over the peninsula and up to Frankston way. And I said, look, I've got to get to Indo. I have to get to Indo. I've got businesses over there. I'm going to lose everything here and there if I don't. As soon as possible, as soon as these things open, I need an exemption. I can't do this morally, mentally. None of them said yes. You know, I was just like the hard no. And then one of them, like, I'd known for a long time, and he was like, look, you surf like the heaviest waves on the planet, and, you know, ship's turns, and I've seen your photos when you've come in here from your Indo trips, and you're at your health, you're like super fit, and what are you even worried about? Like, I've had 3. And I was just like, you know, they say I'm bipolar, but I don't know, you know, like I got medicated with bipolar medication back in my 20s and I threw it out, you know, and I'm so glad I did because those guys that are still on it, like, you know, there's been some times where I've had some extreme highs and extreme lows, but I see the guys that are on that stuff still and it doesn't look like it's worked out for the best often, you know, not always. But
it just dulls them down.
Yeah, or slowly cooks them more.
Right.
Yeah.
So it probably makes it so you can never get off it.
Yeah, you can't get off it. Yeah. So I don't take any of that stuff, and you know, I have muscle relaxants before bed, but you know, and I just try and be, you know, as healthy as I can these days. But yeah, back to this point, he sort of just got me when I was down, and I was just like, I walked out of there just like, I was just broken, man. It was just like, this is just completely defeated. And, you know, like some people are celebrating getting whacked and like getting their like little thing on their Facebook. I got whacked and like it was this huge division. And then suddenly it went from me being this guy that's saying I hate it and copping all this grief from the people that wanted to have it to me being the guy that had one and getting hated on by the people that had 2 because I wouldn't have 2, and then hated on for the people for me from having 1. So then it was like even harder because I'm copping it from both sides. And then, but what happened was, bro, 5 days after I had it, I had my first heart attack in my life. Yeah, I rushed to Rosebud Emergency. I had to shut my shop. People had to help carry it in. My daughter was with me. My missus had to, you know, was knocking off work luckily at the time and came and grabbed my daughter. And I had 3 heart attacks within 5 weeks of the first shot.
3 heart attacks?
Yeah, from one shot of Pfizer. I went from being, you know, that year, it was 2021. I won every heat as a bodyboarder in every Vic title round. In the open division, undefeated every heat, every final. So you're talking, I don't know, 7 heats, finals or whatever. Plus I was doing the drop knee one. I don't remember what I came, but like top 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 or something. But in the open, I was no one had beaten me once in that year, and I was super fit. I was 83 kilos, and now I'm 90. I struggle with my weight because of the heart. It feels like there's a little pin pricking in my heart,
that's not good.
like all the time. And then every now and then it'll just go. And so I've got pericarditis, scarred for life. And so then I've had that and that was really hard, you know, that because I'd made it through the whole lockdown, but I didn't even know. And then I've got people attacking me and I'm speaking up on that. And then the whole Instagram kind of shut down. Everyone was messaging me. I'm in bed in hospital. I told people about it. People don't know if I'm serious, if I'm like, I mean, people didn't know how serious it was. And then I was copping flack from different sides and different angles. And like, I don't know, like I'm trying to explain, I don't know if I said it before, but it's in my head, but like you got the left, the right. Well, people see that, but I don't see that. I see like you're a star up there with your idea and there's a person over there with their idea. And it's not like you're right and you vote for this party and you're left for, you know, like everyone's just a star with their own little vision and their own little input. And we're all just looking at things completely differently. And somehow we're meant to like be put in like the left or the right. And it's like, hang on a minute, that's just all bullshit. And I just was like standing up for what had happened and the truth, because as soon as I was in there, and I put that post up, my phone went nuts, bro.
From both sides, from everybody.
Well, no, mostly from people that were sick, that were in hospital. So it lit up from people just that were sick from the whack around Australia, from like, you know, hospitals in Perth and Lismore and, you know, Gold Coast, Sydney, Newcastle, Wollongong, like all over Melbourne, hospitals everywhere. Like crew going, bro, I'm in Thingo, or I'm in hospital. My heart's the same. Like it lit up, and then, you know, after it was just overwhelming. My following went up like thousands and thousands and thousands really quickly, and most of the people were either injured or their, you know, their brother was, or their mother was, or you know, they had Bell's palsy or shingles or myocarditis, which is much worse than my one. They had various reactions, you know, strokes, seizures. Some have never recovered. And for me, it was just like, fuck. Whoa. And that was just, so that was so like right when I was thinking I'm going to go to Indo and sort my stuff out, I was told I can't even surf anymore. Doctors are like, bro, you got to just chill out. Like, otherwise you could die. You can't go past walking pace. And so I was pretty much in bed, and then it was just doctors, you know, they were just sending me like on the big pharma train ride, like, you got to go see the cardiologist, you got to go see this doctor, and I'm not lucky I had that network, because people started to see, and I'd post more, and then eventually it got to, I got shadow bans warnings, and then they deleted my whole thing, so I lost my whole following, and I don't know, I think it was about, I don't know, it was months anyway, months with Eddie Wearne was gone, so I started Eddie Wearne 2. That was around Canberra. So we'd done all the Melbourne protests. I'd spoken up. It was kind of nice going to the protests, because, you know, we realised we weren't alone. You know, you're in your room and you're feeling like, you know, am I starting to lose it? Is this rabbit hole starting to? But everything I was saying to people, and everything I was thinking, you know, with the Agenda 2030s and your, your World Economic Forums and your meetings with the WHO and the FDA and TJ, and how the elites control all the money and you know, overpower our governments and you know, take the mickey out of Australia, especially even with the mining and the way we're not taxed properly. You know, you look at countries like Norway that are, how differently they tax their natural resources, and how that benefits people compared to Australia if we're just wanting, like, and you know, and you could go down that rabbit hole for another 4 days if you wanted, but we're going to try and keep on track.
We also don't want the episode to be pulled down with some things that might trigger it. So hopefully we've danced around that enough, you know?
Yep. All right. So we'll be a bit aware. So anyway, like, a lot of people have come through it, and you know, it was the Great Awakening, you know, and so, you know, we went up to Melbourne, and there's like a couple 100,000 people or whatever, you know, 100. I don't know. Each week it was just getting bigger and bigger, but because I was vocal and passionate and knew a lot of people, and a lot of people had messaged me going, "Will you speak at Melbourne? Will you get up in front of 250,000 people?" Whatever, like, and I'm like, yeah, sweet, I'll get up. And so I spoke a bit at Melbourne, and I was messaging out. I was in different voice groups, you know, Voices for Choices had like WhatsApp groups, and they were checking in on me and just seeing if I'm all right, like, because they could see, you know, like, I got, you know, it had like, you know, Kelly Slater was on that one with like Barton Lynch and like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you know, lots of surfers from around the world, you know, Jughead, Marty Paradisus, big wave surfers, open-minded people that were like, you know, they're just taking away our freedom, just as it's written in the playbook of, you know, like your digital ID, your cash free, you know, like you know the whole like QR code test, you know, like towards where the dystopian sort of communist China sort of style lifestyle, that was like a test play for that in many people's eyes, and whether or not people see it or not, you know, I see that, and you know, whether, you know, but just a systematic failure by our governments, you know, and then for people like Dan Andrews to now be moving to St Andrews is a hard one for me and a lot of like Peninsula locals. 1 minute he's telling us to that we're not allowed to, you know, have a beer on our own sunset, and now he wants to build his retirement there.
Is he actually doing it?
Well, that's the word anyway. But
I know that the Portsea Golf Club like cancelled his application for a membership.
I think he's playing at one. Right? Look, I don't want to rat that guy out too much, but I mean, on here anyway, you know, like, but it's tough for people to know that, you know, these people can get away with what they got away with and just sort of walk and wipe their hands scot free, and it seems to be anyway, like, let alone running over, you know, hitting runs and, you know, fondling, you know, girls and whatnot over the thing on the, you know, with whatever, you know, all those things that are still going on. And it's like, well, you know, politicians, they can just get away with this and that and do an inadequate systematic failure on the whole state and just, you know, then pay off their $1 million mortgage or whatever it is. And we cop these huge debts and struggle to survive. It's like, so, and I know it's not just me that feels that. And you could tell when you know, are in Melbourne but, you know, like, kids come into the shop now and that are waking up and seeing it, and, you know, like one come in yesterday and they're doing FIFO work or whatever, and he's like, you know what I love about you? And it was just the nicest thing, man. He just goes, you never fucking gave up. And I was just like, and he just bought it. You know, he ordered a board. He ordered a surfboard. I'm not going to name him, but the board's coming in for his next FIFO swing. And then he bought a few leggies and a T-shirt or a hat or whatever. He goes, I just love that you never fucking gave up, no what anyone said.
That's it, man.
And I was just like, you know, just those little things.
That's the thing, man. And like, if you made it through that of 269 days or whatever of lockdown, you can, as a shop, you know you've fought through the hardest battle. You know?
It feels like that. Like, it felt like that at the time, but I don't know, man. The agendas are still playing out, and, you know, they don't really stop in my eyes. I don't see it getting... If our freedoms have just been encroached so much since I was 19 to now, what you think that the people who are in charge of our governments are going to slow it down and it's all going to get better? I think it's, you know, you got to be positive though too, you know, and there are a lot of good things happening, and, you know, I reckon, you know, just to have made it this far, like if I look back at when, you know, I mean, all of it's been a fucking what a ride. Like if I look back to that kid who was sleeping in the boat shed at 15 and you said, bro, this is what's going to happen in your life. You're going to end up meeting all your heroes, surfing against them, traveling the world, opening your own brand, getting sponsored by other brands, opening your own brand, opening your own shop, and then giving back to the community. And then, you know, then you're going to have a hard time getting locked down and you know, copping a bit of debt or whatnot. And yeah, well, like that's another way of looking at it. And it's like sometimes when I have my dark days and I'm, you know, like you might sit in there and sell a block of wax and you're sitting there going, you know, there's more surfers than there's ever been, but where are they all buying their stuff? Like on the internet or...
Get out there and support the brick and mortar shops.
Yeah, and you're going, and you know, you have your other days where you have big days and you're flat out and you're hammered. And it is a little bit of a feast or famine thing down here.
Yep.
Which I think all the businesses, not just Shednine, like all the businesses, especially independents, whether it's a winery or a restaurant, cafe, a gardener or, you know, anything, carpenter, like, you know, you have your ebbs and your flows, but definitely the ones that are tourist-based, like we have such intense summers Easters are pretty good. Hopefully this one's a good one. We've had a great summer this season. It's one of the best in years. It's been amazing. Surf's been pretty good. We're still in T-shirts.
Yeah.
Haven't worn a full steamer in months, like since way into last year. In the water, the water's really warm. The weather's been great. I've had my daughter surfing, skating every week for months, and sometimes you sit there and see all the other kids are doing it more, but then it's also like, those kids are my daughter's friends, and if I keep this shop going, she's going to grow up and spend her teenage years doing that with those kids, and that alone is enough to make anyone want to keep up the good fight for yourself, your kids, and the community.
For sure. And I think the moral of this story is not only to get to Shednine, but to get to any independent physical store that you can. Fuck buying everything online. I know sometimes you can't help it because of whatever.
Yeah.
Get into a physical store, whether it's in Melbourne, Queensland, wherever you are, or Shednine down the peninsula, and buy something from a real life person. And probably use cash.
Yeah, if you can. Cash is always good.
Cash is king. All right, so tell us about FTW.
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting one. So around 10 years ago, a lad called Matty D from Sydney touched base, and he had this, he's bipolar. He's been through a bit with the loss of his sister and his brother through, And he started a brand, to raise awareness for suicide prevention and to help people in a dark place. And he was building an app, and he had the apparel. And look, he had the head of a team rider was like Kobe Abbott from the Bra Boys, and then he had Marty Paradisus who already rode for Shednine since we opened the shop. And Jughead. So we had which are three of Australia's biggest wave lunatics of the time, and renowned legends in their own different ways, but they're big wave guys, and towing and with crazy. And I just said, look, man, I feel a little bit I just feel like they're on that level, and I'm just this dude that rides lots of different boards and does what I can. And he goes, yeah, but that's what we want. We don't want everyone to be in the same mould. I want you to ride for FTW because you ride every different board, and you can talk to the kids in your shop, and people that are going through a hard time can talk to you and help me get it out there. And I went, you know what? Sweet, let's do it. So I did it, and we did. Even he came down on my 40th birthday, and that was the biggest party Baja's ever had that night. And we had heaps of bands, DJs, we raised some money and whatnot. But it was a pretty loose night and whatnot. But I just felt for a fair few years I was flying the flag for FTW, but it was draining for me as well as it was for Matt, who started. You have the best intentions, but it was kind of draining, and because you're not a qualified, you're trying to run a business, you're a surfer, and you're not a qualified psychologist, and you're not everyone's, it was nice at the start, but after a while it was burning me out, and it burnt him out to the point where he just gave up on that dream. And, it was all there. He'd done all the hard work, and he's such a legend for it. And, he'd been through, and he got the app going, and then I think it was just all too much. You pretty much needed a team of specialists to grab that brand and then pump it. And it's still there. I mean, it's still there. They could still do it. FTW was a brainchild of a genius, and Matty D's a legend, and it was an honour to be put up there with Kobe and Marty and Jughead. But yeah, it was also a little bit I just felt like I wasn't on their level. But then again, it made me level up a bit, because I was like, all right, well, people are watching. Instagram's crew are following. They're sharing it. I've got to keep in this game. I've got to keep fit. I've got to keep pushing. And, but yeah, it was to the point where it was, I was looking after people that were about to neck themselves in the middle of the night on the phone. And the missus is like, well, can you, come on, man, you can't keep doing this.
And they should be speaking to someone professional probably as well.
Yeah, and the app, that you put the app out later and it went on, but people wanted to call him and me because we were the faces of it. And I'm sure Marty and, I know Marty and Jughead copped that, and I'd say Kobe would have, and Kobe's a good guy. He's been, he's been through a lot in his life as well. He lives in Indo now, and we've always been good to each other. But he would have copped, I'd say, a fair bit of questioning of people when they're on the brink, and put himself in the position of helping people where they're on the brink. And I still see that in him today, and I see that in Jug and Marty today, and I see that in myself still today, even though I've still got some FTW merch left, and I kind of pride that, and I barely wear it. It's like I want to save it because I never want it to die. It's a bit of pride in that ride. But yeah, it is one of those things that it's all there, and maybe someone will get it going because it was all there. Linked
Sounds
up
like
to
it's
the right
concept
services.
and the right idea with the right mindset that it has got legs. Yeah,
It is an incredible concept, and whether or not it's truly dead, who knows, man? Some things get resurrected, and that's one thing that could be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for Matty D. I hope you're listening to me, bro, wherever you are, somewhere on the Central Coast, I think.
Man, as we get close to wrapping it up, let's leave it on a somewhat of a positive note.
Yeah.
Where do you see Shednine going in the future, and what sort of stuff have you got to look forward to for the rest of 2025 moving forward, man?
This year, well, in the future, around us, they've just approved a skate park in Rye, brand new upgrade. Personally, I wasn't fond of that they're knocking down the old one, but
I thought they could have added to that as well.
Yeah, I thought the cradle was iconic, but look, at the end of the day, the new one's going to be a lot more suitable for a lot more levels.
Yeah,
it's going to be just over a kilometre from my shop. We've got an awesome board riders club. Any kids that want to get into surfing from a young age can start in the super groms and then progress through the other groms. We've got nippers clubs. We've got basketball, footy, It's a beautiful place to live. The mountains are so close. We can snowboard in the winter. We've got waves for beginners in Western Port, waves on the beaches on the small days on the ocean beaches. We've got waves that can teach. You grow up surfing here, you can grow up and and learn to charge the waves here. You can take on anything in the world easily. Like if you're fit and young and you want to go from here and take on any place in the world, well, you just go out and test yourself at the Spot X's on our coast, and you're ready because they're going to test you as much as anything. So that there's all that. Also, the story is that at Cape Shankway in the next few years, we're going to have the Southern Hemisphere's biggest skate, indoor snow, like artificial snow slope, wakeboard, half indoor, half outdoor training academy in the Southern Hemisphere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's at a place called The Ranch. So, I mean, that in itself, it might be, my daughter's 11 and I'm hoping that she's young enough to capitalise on that and be involved in something on that level, and that something like that will hopefully helps our store and just the businesses in general, because kids at the moment are going away to go and do that. So imagine snowboarding and then wakeboarding and then skateboarding at the one place in the one day in the middle of winter, half indoors or something. It sounds fucking radical, So that's cool, and that's that's going to be 5 minutes from my shop, 5 minutes from my daughter's current school.
Amazing.
And we've got it. Yeah, we've got this super strong board riders club that own the whole club. I think it's the only board riders club in Australia where the old guys had enough kudos and enough agates to literally buy the block out there on the way to Gunnedah when it was cheap, affordable land, and build a club and a house, and so that isn't going anywhere. And we have the coolest parties out there. They have the best bands, and it's a really good vibe. And it's become where it was male dominated, oriented, and it was loose beginnings, like the story I told you. They were loose old cats, and they a lot of them travelled Indo, and we're all love getting overseas as a surfer. But they own that club, and it's now there's a lot of girls coming up. There's particularly quite a where it's as many talented young guys. It'd be 50-50 split with young girls coming up.
That's awesome.
Across from the start of demographic of surfing up to sort of 18 now. And a bit of that was due to the lockdowns. There's different positives that come out of being locked down for some artists, musicians, surfers or whatever. There's positives for all of us too. And, it toughened me up and it toughened me, it woke us up and it toughened us up. And like you said, if we can get through that, we can get through whatever's next. But yeah, there's a few positives I can see there. And, what a place to live and what a place to leave a legacy. And whether or not I've got a bricks and mortar shop or not in, say, 10 years, but I'd like to think that, I can keep up the fight. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot. You're giving up a lot of weekends. You're giving up a lot of weekends to pay the rent, and then a lot of weekdays because, you got to pay the wages for every hour you're not there. But if I get a trip or two to Indo and spend most of the rest of the time in that shop and get a surf, 4 or 5 times a week, and my daughter's surfing a couple of times a week and a few day trips to the snow and a bit of skating, well, life's pretty bloody good,
Yeah, it sounds like it is pretty good, man. What's one last final message you'd like to leave people with?
I guess if you really believe in your dreams, you can achieve anything. And, yeah, like, I guess just shred forever. Like, you see these kids coming along and they're all about getting sponsored for this and that now, but it's like, and they see me as like this old dude, but for me, it's like I'm looking at the old dudes that are 75 going like, that's sort of where I'm tuning in with my health and my knowledge and my understanding of it all is like, it doesn't stop. You look at behind you on that poster, and a lot of those crew are a young crew. But if you look at the snowboarder, that's Danny Harris riding a Shednine board in Myoko on his 53rd birthday, showing the kids how to do a road gap.
Wow.
And he's done 30 seasons at Buller. And then below that, you got Owen Fairweather. He just won the world title. Then you got little Ned on the skateboard. He's doing 540 different kind of grabs on the vert. Your little Lily Harris, little Lily Sheriff. Lily Harris is Danny Harris's daughter, sorry. Your Ned Morrison skating. And then, your little Raph is 12. And, the world's these kids' oysters, and they've got to believe in it. Like, the world is a wild place, but anything's possible. And looking back at my journey, if it all stopped tomorrow for some reason, like you had an accident or something happened, like you just look back and go, I wouldn't change a fucking thing, mate. And but also, you get to this point. Each year they tell me this. You hear the story. You're a little bit lonelier as a surfer with your own age demographic. Because old mates had to stop because he's done some injury or. You go over to Indo and one of the lads that used to come has just passed away. And you're at that age, yeah. You're 45, well, I'm 48 this year. I'm closer to 70 than 20. But, I'm here to shred forever. And even though I've come from a fairly wild background, and these sports, when I started, were such loose sports, that's the actual motivation to know that I'm going to try and surf the most perfect waves in the world at some point this year. And, if it takes however many hours of working straight, as long as I get my daughter in the water once a week and to the skate park a bit, and mum's helping out with that and the basketball and athletics. She does, a lot with mum, but, I'm on the board sports thing. We'll do a few day trips in the bus, get around the bus crew. Let's go up to the snow. It's going to be fun. The rickety old thing still goes. And you get to you just keep on going. You don't stop. It's not like you get to 47 and go, hey, I don't want to go surfing anymore. Like, the only reason you sort of stop is because you either let yourself go or you get too broken or you get yourself in a position where you just can't do it anymore. So I think, my message is, like, kids, don't just think about that I've got to be sponsored or I've got to be this and that. Think about the life journey and that you want to like, you can surf and snowboard, like you can skate. You don't have to be the best skater in the world, but I've got mates that are old school and they skate kind of mellow, and I've got a crew that are my age that's skating as like RJ and stuff. Like, they're skating like maniacs, a bit younger than me, but you don't have to push it all to the extreme for your whole life. And you know, just to be able to surf if I could surf till I was, 70, mid-70s. And I think that's part of that battle with wanting, you know, sometimes you go, fuck it, I could just go and get a normal job and then have the weekends off and do this and that. But then I look at guys like Mick Pearce, who built my shop, who shapes and still surfs. He shapes boards down the road. Triggers, who, you know, somewhat may be seen as opposition. I don't see anyone as opposition. Your only opposition is your own mind. You just like, why waste time on that when you can push each other up and focus on what you could do better? And like I see the Triggs, you know, they're still surfing mid-70s, doing well. Phil Grace, I caught up with him on the weekend, and you know he's still surfing mid-70s. And it's those guys. It seems something like if you stay in the game, you know, sometimes you just want to get out of the game, bro. And there's been plenty of times where I've just wanted to smash everything and put the for sale signs up and just. But yeah, there's that little voice inside of me that goes, remember when you were in that under that boat shed and then the kid walks in the shop and goes, you know what I love about you? You never gave up. And so, yeah, I guess my final words would be, you know, it's the journey. It's the journey. It's the destination. It's more the journey. But, like, if you can make the destination that you shred forever, like you can surf, skate and snowboard and bodyboard till you're 70 and, you know, and you can have your fun when you're a kid and get that partying and get that stuff out of the system, because once you're locked into the mortgage and the missus and kids, you can still do it if you're smart and you juggle it. But you know, it does get harder, and you know, it's more of a balance and there's more pressure. But it's going to be worth it, and especially if you grow up doing it with your kids and the next generation. So, shred forever, crew. Let's go. Thanks for having us. 3000 podcast, Maloney.
That's it, man. What a perfect way to end it. Cheers.
Oh, one more thing, bro. I was going to give you this deck. Shednine wood for the good.
Thanks, man.
Stick that up on your wall somewhere so when all of the cool cats from all over 3000 and wherever come down. But yeah, I guess also one more thing before I go. Yeah, no worries, mate. That's a trophy for you to put somewhere. Or skate it if you want. We'll get you another one. But one more thing. Yeah, I guess also I would love a young guy or girl who wants to put Shednine online properly and commit, because I think that's the missing link to our future. So I'll leave it at that and have a water and think about getting in the water and then hanging out tonight with my daughter. Water.
Cheers. Thanks, man. Good on you.